Welcome to Marty in the Door. I'm Marty, but the door is our Lord Jesus Christ, and He invites us to come in that door every time we meet. Today, we're going to go in the door of decision, part 1. Do you ever read a good book and the book is so rich and it reaches to the lost and the saved, and yet the principles in it, the truths in it are God all the way. And so you love to share that book with your friends because we want everyone to know the truth of who Jesus is. And this is just one of these books. This is called The Traveler's Gifts, and the author is Andy Andrews. And you can find this book on Amazon. So the meaning and the purpose the reason this book was written is because it's about the 7 decisions that will give you personal success. Now, when we think about personal success, I don't want you to think that I believe that we're all in it for ourselves and we're just trying to, do some easy way to get to be a more exciting person, leaving Jesus behind. No, Jesus is my passion. Jesus is my life. And if I did not see Jesus in this, I wouldn't share it with you. But this is a book that has really given me more direction in my life and more refining. And so I really want you to hear what the principles are. And the neat thing about Andy's writing in this book, he uses a tool that God uses to reach people. He uses the idea of dreams. Now, God created dreams, and God gave dreams. He gave dreams to Jacob and Joseph and Paul and other people in the Bible. And he gave them direction through those dreams. Well, in this story, what happens is there is a hero in the story, or the main character, and his name is David Ponder. His interesting last name, Ponder, meaning think about, think about. So the main character, I'm going to try to do this in a story form too, has lots and lots of dreams when he's in a coma. And each one of the dreams is traveling back in history to meet people who we have learned to cherish and love and enjoy their stories and learn from their life principles. And so Andy Andrews has compacted this in this book. And it's just like, to me, it was like finding treasure and to discover these different characters and their specific truths. And the truth is personal decisions. My decisions, your decisions. The decisions that we make affects our life. It's not just something that happens, but it should be something that we are realizing this one builds on this one, builds on this one, builds on this one. And so decisions make all the difference, the decisions that we are going to make. So to the story, David had worked his way up in his company, and he spent hours and hours and hours in his company. He loved his work. He spent way into the night doing it. And one night, just like that, everything changed. Another company bought out his company, and he lost his job. He lost his company car. He lost his phone. He lost his privileges to the health club, and everything fell in for him. He struggled with this. His identity was gone. You know what? God wants our identity to be in Him, not in what we do. And yet that's where it is with most people. Your identity is in what you can perform, what you're doing. And so when that happened, he lost his desire to live. And he said, maybe the family would be better off without me. And maybe, I could just take my life and it would be all over with. Please don't ever go there. That is not your answer. That is not your answer. So he's driving in a bad weather and ends up having a wreck. And in this wreck, he's knocked out. Now that's when the book begins to come alive with the dreams. Because without him realizing it, he began to dream. And each dream would take him into a setting, to a place where a famous, well-known character lived and was making a decision. So I've made little icons or little things to cause us to remember the person or the thing that happened. And my very first one is a tiny pair of spectacles, a little pair of glasses with little round frames. I wonder if you have any idea who wore these glasses. Well, David didn't, but he ended up in this room. There was a little man sitting behind a desk wearing these little spectacles. And he seemed to be going through a lot of papers, and he seemed to be a little troubled at what he was doing. And he was alone in the room. And suddenly, the man is aware of David Ponder in the room. And he said, "Okay, get up. You're here now." And it's like, this man knows me, David's thinking, and he wants to talk to me. And where am I? And the man said, "You are in Potsdam, Germany, a suburb of Berlin, in a free zone presently controlled by the Red Army. It's Tuesday, July 24th, 1945. And David thinks, am I in a hospital? Is this my doctor? Well, he certainly doesn't have a good bedside manner if he does. And then he thinks, David thinks, Potsdam. Why is that familiar? That's where the famous war conference was after the decision had been made to drop the atomic bomb on Japan during World War II. All the breath seemed to go out of David as he grasped for the chair behind him. You're Harry Truman. And he said, well, you're the one they say, give them hell, Harry. And Truman grimaced, I never give anybody hell. I just tell the truth, and they think it's hell. So these two men have a particular conversation. And as it continues, David is saying, I don't know why I'm here. And I don't know what's supposed to happen to me. And he said, am I dead? Oh no, Truman, you're not dead. Well, am I dreaming? Yes, you're dreaming. All through the time, God has used dreams to reveal things to people, he tells him. And he says, I don't even know if I believe in God anymore. And Truman says, well, he believes in you. And he says, how do you know that? And he said, because you're here. And so they continue having conversations. And he says, who can see me? A man walks in Truman's office and he can't see him, doesn't know what's going on. And I think sometimes when God shows us things, nobody sees it but us. Nobody hears it but us. Isn't that interesting? Well, the people in these dreams would never see David except for the very one that God had appointed to share a piece of truth with them. So he said to David, Truman says to David, your future is what you decide it to be. And David says, you say my future is what I decide? Yes, we're all the one who does the choosing. You've got to stop blaming people in your past. Your mental condition, your emotional condition, your financial condition, it's all about the choices you make. If you think back, you remember the choices you've made. You chose what college to go to. You chose what your profession would be. You chose the wife you would marry. You chose how many children you would have. You chose the house you would build. He said, all of these things are in your hands. And it's time for you to realize it's nobody's fault but yours where you are and what happens to you. He said, ever since the beginning of time, starting with Eve, it was somebody else's fault. He said, you've got to decide what to do. Do I want to deploy this bomb? No. But I'm making a decision. It's the best thing for the American people, and that's why I'm going to do it. And he continues to talk to him about decisions, and he said, I've been given a piece of paper to write something on, and I'm giving it to you now. Now, I don't want you to read it in my presence, but as soon as you read it, you'll be transported to the very next place that you're going. And so he leaves the room, and David opens the little piece of paper, and he reads, "The buck stops here." What was President Truman wanting to tell David? I'm stuffing these in a little pouch because one of the people gave him a pouch to put things in, and he would have that at the end of this experience. This is what Truman wrote: "I will accept responsibility for my past. I understand the beginning of wisdom is to accept the responsibility for my own problems, and that by accepting responsibility, I free myself to move into a bigger, brighter future of my own choosing. I am where I am today, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially, because of decisions that I have made. My thoughts will be constructive, never destructive. My mind will live in the solutions of the future, and I will not dwell in the problems of the past. Don't ask, why me? Say, why not me? Challenges are gifts. They are opportunities to learn. Problems are the common thread running through the lives of great men and women. In times of adversity, I will have a choice to make. Adversity is preparation for greatness." Isn't that just a solid truth that God wants all of us to know as Christians walking this walk? And so immediately after he read that and tucked it in his little pouch, he was in a palace. And there he saw a king sitting on a throne. And that king was Solomon. He could tell by the way that a decision was being made that he'd read about in the Bible. Remember the story of the two women who brought in two babies, and one was dead and one was alive, and they were arguing over whose live baby belonged to who. And the woman who had rolled over and killed her baby said, "That's my baby." And the other mother said, "No, she laid on her baby, killed it, it's my baby." And the judge, Solomon, said, "Bring me my sword. I'll cut the baby in half and we'll divide it. Each of you will have a portion." And the mother whose baby it was said, "No, no, no, give her the baby." But the other one said, "Yes, cut it in half and neither one of us will have it." And Solomon knew instinctively which one was the mother, and he gave it to the right one. And then Solomon seemed to notice that David was in the room, and he said to him, "Come with me." And he cleared out the hall and had everyone move out of the way. And here he said, "I've been told to give you a special scroll, a special word. But I want you to listen a few minutes before I give you this. But after you read it, then you will be transported to the very next place that you're going." And so he said, "You need to know what this is and get it in your heart. And that's why you're going to keep it and save it, because I want you to be able to share this with other people." And so David leaned forward. "What is it you want me to know?" He said, "Seek for wisdom." Does God not say that in the Bible? Seek for wisdom. Wisdom is the beginning of the fear of the Lord, to know God and know who he is. And he said, "Well, how do I seek for it?" He said, "You got to gather it. It's not just going to come to you. You've got to go out and you've got to bring this in. You need to change your future by changing your actions. And you need to realize you're in charge, but you need direction." And he said, "Well, how am I going to get it?" He said, "Who are the people that you're with? Do you care about who your children are with?" "Oh, yes." He said, "Acquaintances and friends circle around you. In the multitude of many counselors, there's wisdom." And he said, "You need to put people around you, and you need to be around people who are wise and listen. Sometimes, David, you hear, but you don't really listen. And so you need to listen." You know, a lot of times we get warnings and we know it. Someone tells us something and we ride right over it because of our stubborn will. And then he said, "So the second thing I want you to know is that you need to learn to value other people." And he said, "How do I do that?" You value people by serving them. Serving other people gives them value and gives them honor. And he said, "I want you to have this piece of paper." And actually, Solomon handed it to him in a little scroll. But he opened it up, and of course, we already know what the word said. "I will seek wisdom." I will seek. Do you do that? Do you pray and ask God before you make decisions, or do you just do whatever you want? And these were a few comments that were written on the paper. Knowing wisdom waits to be gathered, I will search her out. I will train my eyes and my ears to read, to listen, to hear recordings, to watch things that will bring me wisdom, and I will choose not to look at foolishness and things that detract, that bring me fear, that bring me doubts. I will not search out those things. I will know who my friends are, and I will look for people that I value the way they live their lives. I will become a humble servant. I will not look for somebody to open the door for me, but I will look for who can I open a door for. Now, the next one, I have to remove this picture for a minute. I have brought to you something that my husband and I got in Gettysburg. This is a picture of the Union soldiers going into battle. And I want you to notice they all have their bayonets ready to go. Suddenly, David found himself tumbling and plunked in the midst of a battlefield. He looked around and saw men who were hungry, who were shabbily dressed, and shoes that were off, and clothing that looked like rags. And there he saw one man who seemed to be the leader of all the men. His name was Joshua Chamberlain. He was the head of the 20th of Maine, from the state of Maine. And David listened to the cannonballs flying by, and he heard the guns. He heard the pain. He saw the pain and the anguish of the men. And in the midst of it, he said, "How did you get here? Why am I here?" And Chamberlain said, "I was just a school teacher." But he stepped up to the plate. He stepped up to do what he felt he wanted to do to free the slaves. And so David stood in the midst of the men who, of course, could not see him. And he heard and he saw the men coming to Chamberlain and saying, one of the men said, "We're out of supplies. We can't go any further. It's too much for these men. We've got to retreat." And Chamberlain said, "There's no retreating here. There's no going back here. We can't go back. We've got to go on." And David realized, this is Gettysburg. This is Gettysburg. This is where the Civil War was fought. And as David stood there and watched him and listened to the things that he was saying, he heard Chamberlain say, "We cannot retreat. We must go on. We must go on. We've got to press toward the mark." And there we see another little piece of God's word. We press on to the mark of the prize of the high calling. And he said, "I want you to notice this. If we stay here, what will happen? If we go back, what will happen? I choose to act. I am a person of action." And the man who had come to stand in front of Chamberlain said, "Okay, all right." And Chamberlain says, "Fix your bayonets. Take the bullets out of the ones who are laying dead, and let's charge. We're going to charge." And he yelled out the word, "Bayonets, bayonets, charge, charge." And these men came running down to meet the enemy, the Confederates. And the Confederates were stumped. They saw the determination in these men. They were coming downhill on them. And they did a strange thing. They retreated. They turned and went back. But it took a leader. It took a man who was a man of decision. And he was, just before he went down the hill with the men, he said, "Here's the paper that I have written for you, that I've been told to give you this." And David opened the paper, and inside the paper it said, "I am a person of action. I am a person of action." He folded the paper and put it back in the pouch. Now the pouch This is where the pouch comes in, because it was an old tobacco pouch that Chamberlain had. It was faded. It had buttons on the front of it with little gold eagles on each button. And I think those eagles were a reminder of America, we love you, we're fighting for you. At one point, David asked him, he said, whose side do you think God's on? And Chamberlain said, I don't really consider much about that. I just want to know who's on God's side. Who's on God's side? You know what? Everywhere, all around us, there are people who love God. We need to know who they are, and they're on our side. Those who love God, because we are on God's side. Well, David opened up the paper, and these are some of the things that he was reading. I am a person of action. Beginning today, I will create a new future by creating a new me. No longer will I dwell in the pit of despair, moaning over squandered time and lost opportunity. I can do nothing about the past. My future is immediate. I will grasp it in both hands and carry it with running feet. I think that's interesting, because these men had to run, and they had to run with passion. They had to run with determination. I am a person of action. I am energetic. I move quickly. Knowing that laziness is a sin, I will create a habit of lively behavior. I will walk with a spring in my step and a smile on my face. The lifeblood rushing through my veins is urging me upward and forward into activity and accomplishment. Wealth and prosperity hide from the sluggard, but rich rewards come to the person who moves quickly. I'm a person of action. I inspire others with my activity. I'm a leader. Leading is doing. To lead, I must move forward. Many people move out of the way for a person on the run. Others are caught up in the wake. My activity will create a wave of success for the people who follow me. My move will be consistent. This will install confidence in my leadership. As a leader, I have the ability to encourage and inspire others to greatness. It's true. An army of sheep led by a lion would defeat an army of lions led by a sheep, because the sheep is known to be indecisive and such a follower. The lion is one who steps out and is bold. I'm a person of action. I can make a decision, and I can make it now. A person who moves neither left nor right is destined to mediocrity. When faced with decisions, many people say they're waiting for God, but I understand in most cases, God is waiting for me. He's given me a healthy mind to gather and sort information and the courage to come to a conclusion. Now notice this, the things that this man is saying is building on the things the others have said. Truman said, you take the responsibility. The buck stops here. And Solomon said, search for wisdom and wait for it. And here he's saying, we need to get wisdom. He's given me a healthy mind to gather and sort information and the courage to come to a conclusion. I'm not a quivering dog, indecisive and fearful. My constitution is strong and my pathway clear. Successful people make their decisions quickly and change their minds slowly. Failures make their decisions slowly and change their minds quickly. My decisions come quickly and they lead to victory. I'm a person of action. I am daring. I am courageous. Fear no longer has a place in my life. You know, I read the difference between fear and faith. They both are expecting. Fear is expecting the worst. Fear is expecting all bad things to happen. But faith is expecting good things to happen. It's putting its dependence on God and what He has stored up. For too long, fear has outweighed my desire to make things better for my family. Never again. I have exposed fear as a vapor, an impostor that never had any power over me in the first place. I do not fear opinion, gossip, or idle chatter of monkeys, for all are the same to me. I do not fear failure, for in my life, failure is a myth. Failure exists only for the person who quits. I do not quit. I am courageous. I am a leader. I seize this moment. I choose now to be a person of action. So far, we've looked at 3 men. We have 4 more to go. But we are going to take another program, and we are going to conclude the 4 left behind to show you the completion of the 7 decisions that we need to be making all the time, every day. I wrote these down on paper and put them on my refrigerator because I want to keep these things in my mind, in my heart. I want to do it. I don't want to just think it. I want to do it. And so I want to encourage you to check in next week on Marti and the Door. You can always find me, Marti and the Door, on Facebook. And you can find me on Roku Television, on Unshackled, under original programs, Marti and the Door. So next week, we're going to continue on with the Door of Decision, Part 2.